And what peace? We will have peace when everybody believed, when everybody understand that religion is a personal thing, it's a relationship between you and your God, and you don't force yourself on others. You don't force people to worship God. You worship God because it's you. It's your God. And others must understand that it's my God before they can understand what it means to worship. So we enjoy peace when we understand this fact that I'm worshiping God because He's my God. And to let people know that this is my God, you only have to introduce your God to others. And when they accept your God, they worship your God with you. Thank you.
Just to say, this here. And what he does now?
Oktar Babuna, I'm a medical doctor, neurosurgeon from Turkey. I represent Mr. Adnan Oktar, Harun Yahya, TV channel A9. Well, for global peace, there is a lack of love in the world. Two things are playing a great role. One is the Darwinism. If you put in the subconscious mind of the people that you're a fighting animal, you have to fight for survival. If you're strong, you will survive. If you are weak, you will get eliminated. And by crushing the weak individuals, of course, that causes all the violence and the terror in the world. The second thing is the bigotry. There are radical and extremist terrorist organizations which is definitely against the Quran. So we have to do an education, but not university education I'm talking about. Education, good morality from the Quran, and the scientific struggle against Darwinism. This is going to bring peace to the entire world, inshallah. And Islamic union is very essential for the Islamic world. Muslims are being oppressed all over the world. But through Islamic union and with education in the Islamic world, in the entire world, the world will be rescued. And inshallah, this will be a golden age for the entire world. And these days will come because Allah says in the Quran, Allah will prevail His religion, Islam, to the entire world in Surah An-Nur 55. Inshallah, these are the glad tidings of these specific times.
Everyone, and would like to meet you as well. So I'm very happy that there are two institutions who are working with me, with us, have been working actually for a long time. I'm very happy to welcome David Michaels, the president of the Foreign Press Association, and Mark Donfried of the Institute of Culture Diplomacy. I'm honored because I'm honorary member of this organization and I'm member of the international board of the other organizations. So we join forces whenever we would like to create a great crowd. And you are a fantastic crowd because I see many faces, new faces coming from all over the world. And I see really great friends, journalists coming from New York in this hectic time. So thank you very much being interested in Hungarian foreign policy. I will ask my dear friends just to say a few words of welcome and then we start. David.
You'll be pleased to hear that I had a 10-minute speech and it's now 30 seconds. Anyway, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. And those of you who really know Hungary's representative of the United Nations are not surprised at her initiative to merge diplomacy, culture, and the media at a singular event. Culture is the strongest thread in the human fabric of a nation. Culture is a nation's bridge between the past and the future. Diplomacy and media communications enable a nation to represent its fabric to the rest of the world. Together, diplomacy, culture, and the media are the catalysts of positive change and peaceful development between nations. Please join me in again thanking Kathleen for this excellent initiative in bringing together diplomacy, culture, and the media. Thank you.
From the wisdom of the foreign minister and getting to know better also Hungary and Hungarian foreign policy. So thank you again, and we wish everyone a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask the foreign minister to give his insight about the role of Central Europe in the world. You know, you here in New York probably don't know too much about Central Europe, but we think we are in the heart of the world anyway. So when we were talking about what kind of topic the foreign minister would like to talk about, it seemed to be a very perfect one, especially because Hungary holds the presidency of the week for countries.
Ambassador put it rightly, and thank you very much for putting together such a distinguished audience for tonight, where we try to emphasize the role of Central Europe under the quickly changing circumstances of the current global changes, and try to understand a little bit more and highlight a little bit more about why we think that the Central European countries could and should be natural and obvious allies for the US presidential administration. The ambassador put it rightly, our position is a little bit more complicated by name than just a Minister of Foreign Affairs. In Hungarian, the ministry I lead has a name, Ministry of External Economic Relations and Foreign Affairs, and sequencing counts, to be honest. You know, we are a small country with a small but open economy. And when it comes to global issues, we always have to be careful, because we have to be aware of the fact that small countries can say interesting and exciting things, but it's very complicated for small countries to say important things. And if you think that you are more important than you should think about that, then you become ridiculous very easily. So that's why being careful, we might agree that this integration used to be a global power, but I think the expression used to be is there with a good reason, because currently, because of the global changes, European Union has to fight for this position because it's not quite obvious that we still occupy it. Why? Because we have lost a lot of competitiveness, obviously, in the recent years. And the reason for that is that the European Union has been faced with enormously historic challenges. If you just allow me, I would like to list a couple of them. Migration, you all know about that. Migration crisis is the most serious challenge European Union has ever had to face. A threat of terror. I remember a couple years or decades back, not to be shy, so a couple of years back, when we watched television, watched the news, we have seen the scenes in the Middle East, we were quite sure that such kind of phenomena definitely would never happen in Europe. And now a threat of terror has become the part of everyday life. And this is something that we do not want to accept, but currently this is the situation. And there are the challenges of energy security. We speak a lot about the necessity of diversification, but no significant forward progress has been completed. There's a war in Ukraine, and there's Brexit. The British citizens decided to leave the European Union. And we have to admit that if you list these historic challenges, we have to admit that no real answers have been given to these challenges, because within a maximum 2 years, the economic performance of the European Union will be decreased by its 1/7. That's the stake UK represents. The size of single market will be decreased. On the other hand, the cooperation between European Union and Russia is worse and worse day by day, although there has been no forward progress regarding the implementation of the Minsk agreements. As we see, the terrorist attacks pose the most serious threat of terror ever on the European Union, and ended up in the worst security situation ever in the modern history. And we see a European Commission in the meantime, which definitely overplays its role, and instead of looking for real solutions for these real challenges, sometimes, I think with a good reason, we have a feeling that they rather take too much time to insult some member states of the European Union. Currently, there is a big debate within the integration which way to go forward, how we look at the future of the European Union. And I think that it's rather natural and obvious currently that we have a debate, because we have a big number of historic challenges. We have 28 sovereign member states. So I think we should not consider it as a tragedy, should not consider it as bad news that we have debates. Because when should we have debates, if not now, about the future of the integration? And maybe it's simplifying a little bit, or simplification a little bit, but I can tell you that there are two major camps arguing with each other. One can be described as a federalist camp, representatives of which say that more authorities should be taken to Brussels, less to be left by the member states. So creation, a kind of a United States of Europe, would be the desirable solution. I don't want to hide that we don't agree with that. We belong to the other camp, which can be considered as like sovereignist. This camp says, or the countries in this camp say that we should not bring more authorities to Brussels because EU can only be strong if the member states are strong. So the stronger the member states are, the stronger the European Union can be. So these are the two major approaches which are now in clash currently about the future of the European Union. But once again, I would like to underline that it's not a bad news that we have a debate, and I rather consider that an undemocratic approach which would like to take away the right from the countries to discuss and debate about the future. In this debate, there is one strong, and there are multiple, but there's definitely a strong and pragmatic voice, which is echoed by Central Europe, by the Central European countries. So I think I may be biased, but I still have the position that the common sense is represented by the Central European countries in this debate. And we have a huge advantage here that we are not hijacked by hypocrisy and political correctness, as many factors in European politics, unfortunately. And hypocrisy and political correctness are exactly two reasons why European Union has not been able to find the proper solutions for the major challenges so far. And based on this common sense, based on policies, based on common sense, it's not an exaggeration to say that currently Central Europe is the safest, most secure place of Europe, and Central Europe is the growth engine for the European economy, with having a higher growth rate than the European average itself. You know, the country I represent, as the other Central European countries as well, have suffered under a very long communist regime. As a consequence, the welfare state concept has never been completed in these countries. And instead of that, I would describe our societies like workfare societies. Societies which are merit-based. And merit you can reach through labor, through work. And that's why the Central European countries put job creation and labor in the heart of their economic policies, and put together economic strategies which support those people who want to work more, and those companies, those employers who would like to employ more people. And based on this pragmatic approach towards economy, we succeeded to be able to maintain a growth path which is currently above the European average, although we have to be fair enough to say that we are coming, of course, from a much deeper situation than anyone else in the European Union. Just to understand, I'm pretty sure that in Central Europe we will never have such kind of a debate that is now going on in some Western European countries about how to decrease the weekly working hours. And in the meantime, they want to be competitive with China. But then the question arises how. So you can be sure that in Central Europe, such kind of questions will not arise in the future. Regarding the Visegrad cooperation, which was put forward by the ambassador, I can tell you that the Visegrad cooperation, so Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary, is the tightest and the strongest and most effective alliance within the European Union. It became a brand, it became a factor, because if it was not a factor, then definitely there would be no excitement in the European political elite and in European media whenever the leaders of this alliance gather. And you know, there's always a question mark in the political elite and in the media, so what they gonna find out again? What they gonna say again? So there's always an excitement which shows that, the Visegrad cooperation is a factor. And you know, what gives strength to this alliance is that 8 or 9 out of 10 major issues, we usually have the agreement and the general understanding. And of course, media is always interested in that 1 or 2, where we might have different approaches. But if you put into consideration honestly that in a marriage, if you agree on 8 or 9 major issues out of 10, that's supposed to be a long one. And in this case, since we are sovereign countries, 4 sovereign countries, the fact that 8 or 9 major issues out of 10 we represent the same position shows the strength of the alliance. But we have to be honest and aware of the fact that the Visegrad cooperation is not pretty much favored, not pretty much favored. And we were absolutely not frustrated, unlike others, by this statement of your president. We were a little bit more frustrated about the reactions. And I think here we can pose 2 very simple questions. So, who would say America first, if not the American president? Or the other way around, what would the American president say, what first if not America? So for us it was kind of obvious and gave us the right and the authorization to not only to think but to speak and act the same way. National interest comes first. And you know, in the Central European countries we are very patriotic people. And this is based on a historic fact that we had to fight for our freedom many times, and we had to fight for our freedom very recently as well. So national sovereignty is as high on our agenda as here in the United States. We think the same way about migration and security as well, and we both think, Central Europeans and Americans, I mean the administrations, that it's a matter of statehood that you can protect your own borders. And if you are a state, then you do have to be in a position to make your decision on your own, whom you let enter the territory of your country and whom you do not let enter the territory of your country. And both of us look at illegal migration as a threat, as a security threat, which gives the opportunity for terrorist organizations to take advantage of illegal, massive flaws to send terrorists and fighters to other parts of the world. And I can tell you that regardless of all pressure put on us, regardless of all blackmailing, Central European countries stick to their position on illegal migration. We will protect our peoples, we will protect our countries, and we will never accept what was said by one of the mayors of big European cities, which was that you know, terrorism and bombs are parts of everyday life in big cities. Now this is something that we will never accept. We will fight against this phenomenon in a united and unanimous way. But ladies and gentlemen, on the other hand, I have to tell you that we were very happy with the new American administration putting fight against terror very high on their agenda. We are a committed partner and ally of the United States in this regard as well. And we are proud that with the authorization of the Hungarian parliament, 200 Hungarian troops have been serving as part of the US-led global anti-ISIS coalition. 200 Hungarian troops are serving in Iraq, in Erbil, under partly Italian and German command. And we totally agree with your president that we cannot relax and lay back until ISIS is totally defeated. ISIS is a major security threat to Europe as well, since all of the major terrorist attacks, around 30 in the last 2.5 years, which demanded 300 lives, were all committed by ISIS. And ISIS is one of the major root causes for illegal migration, not to speak about the fact that because of ISIS, Christianity and the Christian religion became the most persecuted religion all over the world. And with the horrific attacks by ISIS, now every 4 out of 5 persons who are killed because of their religion are Christians. And we Christians have to speak about that, because if we Christians don't speak about that, no one will speak about that. And that's why protection of Christian communities all around the world is a very important responsibility of ours. And I would like to speak about, just very shortly, about the region which is neighboring to Central Europe, but is very high on the US foreign agenda as well, because of its significance regarding geography and geopolitics, and this is the Western Balkans. You know, we are living in a neighborhood of the Western Balkans, so we pretty well know the difference between two positions. One, if there's peace and tranquility and stability in the Western Balkans, and number two, when there's a lack of all of this. And we have to be aware of the fact that there are historic tensions currently on the Western Balkans, and the best way to overcome them is through Euro-Atlantic integration. So we are absolutely interested in supporting these countries on their way, on their path towards Euro-Atlantic integration, and here we have a coincidence of interest with the United States again. Although we have to be honest that there's kind of an enlargement fatigue in the European Union, so we cannot have very good hopes about the future of the EU enlargement, but we do hope that regarding NATO, the enlargement process will be accelerated. And when it comes to NATO, you know, we really, I would say ridiculous if it was not too serious. But since it's serious, I would say tragic. We really found tragic the reactions on Donald Trump's.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your presentation. My name is Arthur Jaffe, and I'm an American Muslim. I admire your comments.
Sorry.
I'm an American Muslim. While I admire your presentations and the progress Hungary has made, economic progress and progress in the other areas,
I'm feeling privileged to be here. And secondly, I feel proud listening to your comments about the atrocities against the Christian community. I'm not disagreeing that the Muslim community is not facing the problems, but sometimes when we use the term Islamophobia, this is exaggerated sometimes. May I humbly request my friends, just consider it as the Muslims are in problems and there are so many people to raise voice against this, but Hungary is the first country which has at least taken initiative to highlight the Christian community issues. I would like to commend you, and I would just like to say I have 2 small gifts for you and the permanent ambassador, which I would like to give you later. Thank you.
So when you were speaking, I almost heard, or I certainly heard echoes of Maggie Thatcher's speech in Bruges. And her Bruges speech was all about championing national sovereignty, talking about the democratic deficit in Brussels, and so on and so forth. So my question is that with Brexit, do you think your camp has weakened?
I'm a neurosurgeon from Turkey, TV channel 9. Well, as you know, Turkey accepted 3.5 million refugees from Syria, and they are brothers and sisters, and our doors are open to everybody because these people are in need. We cannot return them back to the murderers. I'm not criticizing your policy, of course, your helpful policy, but EU countries, I think, should support Turkey, because Turkey is not a rich country, and it can double, it can triple, doesn't matter. These people are in need. They cannot be returned back to the murderers. That's one thing. The second thing is radicalism and terrorism. You talked about military interventions, but military interventions have been tried many decades. Violence only generates more violence. There are more than 44 terrorist organizations all over the world. There is fundamental ideology of terrorism. Bigotry, superstitions are accepted widely in the Islamic world. Instead of trying these military interventions, modern warfare, smart bombs, and putting bullets into the heads of the people. Why not putting ideas in the head of the people? To change their false ideas with the true ideas. Educational campaigns. Don't you think this will be more effective? Thank you.
European security force. And there's strong support also in some elements of the German leadership on both sides of the political aisle for the concept of developing a military capability for Europe that is separate and distinct from NATO. What is the position of your government and the Visegrad Group on this direction and the opinion of President Macron of France?
Thank you.
That's right. You pass.
Almost taking the research. First,
Okay, closer.
your very brilliant ambassador made the point that your country, Trump, and had obviously shared some opinions with him very closely. Do you look upon the United Nations as a failed institution? And if so, what do you think should be done to make it a little bit more vital? Thank you.
It's shown that foreign affairs is no more boring, and like a couple of decades ago, as foreign affairs was rather about making long-term strategies while smoking cigars and drinking fine whiskey and making philosophies for hours and hours. Now this is not that kind of age, definitely, and foreign affairs can make excitement, and that's good news, I think, for all of us who deal with foreign affairs. First, I would like to address the question of the gentleman about the Christians. You know, I can say that I wholeheartedly reject your accusation, which was put in the form of a question at the very end of your contribution, but I don't do it since it's a friendly environment. But what I would like to tell you is that, you know, being a good Christian means that you cannot be anti-anything. If you are Christian, you cannot be anti-anything. And in the meantime, I can tell you that I myself, as a Christian, I think I really do have the right to speak about persecuted Christian communities all over the world. No one can take this right away from me. As my friend, Foreign Minister of Turkey, Mevlut, he usually speaks about Islamophobia, and he usually speaks about the phenomenon of persecuted Muslim communities, which he is right. Because there are persecuted Muslim communities, there are parts of the world where there is Islamophobia. Unfortunately, we wish there was no such kind of a phenomenon. But may I ask why I should not be allowed to speak about the phenomenon that in many places of the world Christian communities are under very heavy persecution? I don't think that it's fair to take to question this right of each other, because that leads to very bad consequences, like what you have put at the very end of your contribution. And I don't think that any of us being here in this room would suffer from any kind of phobia. And you can be sure that me or us, as good Christians, we are absolutely against any kind of phobias, especially against Islamophobia, because once again I would like to tell you that being Christian means that you cannot be anti-anything. On the other hand, about migration, wall and fence and all these measures. You know, and that comes to illegal migration as well, so maybe I put it in a package. And in the meantime, I would like to express to you how much we respected the president of the International Olympic Committee. So when it comes to the phenomenon of illegal migration, I cannot consider a form of migration legal in which people in a massive crowd violate a border between two peaceful countries. I cannot consider a migratory flow legal as people entering territory of a country by violating its border, not cooperating with the local authorities. I cannot consider migration legal when people in big crowd occupy public areas block highways and occupy railway stations just because they would like to get to another country. This is not the way people should behave. Just simply. There's a legal way how you can enter the territory of another country, right? There are rules and regulations, as you do it, as I do it. And I cannot put here forward any reason, just to give you a practical example, what I think illegal migration. I cannot put here any reason here why anyone should be allowed to violate a border between Croatia and Hungary, for example. Two peaceful countries, two members of the European Union. What's the reason for that? Because if we say that from today onward it is allowed to anyone to cross a border between two EU member states just as he or she wants, then from tomorrow onwards the question is then why cannot we do it in any other part of the world? Why do I have to be photographed if I want to come to the United States? So, there are rules and regulations how you can cross borders. And definitely, if you do it against the regulations, it's just simply illegal. Because once again, I would like to reiterate, and here I come to Turkey, because we really respect the endeavors of Turkey. We were absolutely in favor of the EU-Turkey deal regarding migration. I feel very badly, when your country is being criticized constantly by European leaders. Because I'm very frustrated, I feel frustrated when some European leaders seem to be more concerned about the rights of those who committed a coup in your country than because of the coup itself. And when there were negotiations with Turkey, we were absolutely in favor in putting together a substantive financial package with which we can support Turkey. And when I listen to Mevlut, when he complains to me that the 3 billion euros were not paid yet to Turkey, I think it's not the proper way. And if we agreed in something, then we have to deliver. And this is exactly our policy, that we have to bring help where it is needed. And we understand there are war-torn areas from where people have to leave, where people are forced to leave. And if you cross a border of a war-torn area and the next country, that is definitely not illegal, to come back to the other gentleman's question. And we think that what EU should do, is to support substantially, with a robust amount of money, those countries which have been taken care of refugees around the war-torn areas. Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, the Kurdish region of Iraq. We made our initiatives to increase financial resources for these countries. Because we think, once again, we have to bring help where it is needed. That's why Hungary, by the way, supports financially Christian communities living all around the war-torn areas in order to remain strong. Because when we talk to their leaders, you know what they say? They beg, please, do not encourage our people to leave and go to Europe, because then our communities will be over. So our policy is we have to bring help where it is needed, and we have to help those countries which have been taken care of refugees. When it is about defense, Hungary belongs to the Schengen area in the European Union. And the Schengen Code says that if you are a country located at the external border of the Schengen area, then it is your core obligation to make it sure that your border is only crossed through the official border crossing points with the necessary and proper travel documentation during opening hours. And when this whole crisis broke out in 2015, then we posed the question in Brussels whether this extraordinary situation can serve as an excuse, not to comply with these European regulations. Answer was no. You have to comply with all your obligations. And complying with the Schengen obligations, with more than 500 kilometers of land border, which is either external border of EU or external border of the Schengen area, you cannot do anything else than build a physical infrastructure. And you know why European Union is hypocritical on that? Because that commissioner of the of the European Commission, who is responsible for migration, is a Greek person, by the way. He was the Minister of Defense of Greece when Greece built a fence on the Greek-Turkish border because the illegal migration from Turkey to Greece was too significant, and this minister made a statement that this fence is a very good solution to tackle the illegal migration from Turkey to Greece. He was the Minister of Defense. He praised it, and now he stands in Brussels at the press conference and bashes those countries who do the same. You know? And I have never heard any complaints about Spain building fences around their cities in North Africa. I never heard any complaint about Bulgaria building a fence on their border to Turkey. So double standards should not apply, regardless whether we agree about the core issue or not. And one another additional element to that. When there's a huge illegal influx, mass influx of migration, then when there are tens of thousands on a daily basis crossing borders, unregulated, uncontrolled, unchecked, even when we travel, I'm X-rayed on an airport, whether I take something with me or not. And we had days when tens of thousands of people enter the territory of Hungary massively without any kind of control and any kind of regulation. Another question is whether it poses a security threat or not. Whether it gives the opportunity for terrorist organizations to take advantage of this wave and send their terrorists or not. And you know why we have, or what proves that we have hypocrisy in Europe, that when I speak like this, and I usually do because I can afford to say what I think. You know, it is usually characterized in Europe that the foreign minister of Hungary said that the migrants are terrorists. Did I say? No, definitely I didn't. What I said that this illegal, huge, massive influx gives opportunity for terrorist organizations to ruin security in other parts of the world. Now about fight against terror and not only to use weapons, right, or to make education. Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree that that we have to start this whole. So a very important element of our anti-terrorist or anti-terror strategy should be education programs for the youngsters, to show them and to prove them that that terrorism is not the way, and especially not the only way, to live their lives.
And dialogue, because this is what we believe in. Thank you very much.
ITV, Call of Peace, Save